Good morning and welcome to this early edition of the Stylo News Intelligence Update for May 1st, 2026. I'm your host, here to bring you a calm, verified, and objective look at the facts shaping our world today. In this morning's explainer, we're looking at a specific two-week intelligence window from mid-April, mapping out the complex and rapidly evolving security environment in Northern Europe. We'll look past the flashy headlines to give you a precise, structured brief on the Northern Front and examine exactly how Russia's strategic posture is actively testing NATO's Arctic edge. So let's get right into it. Before we dive into the analysis, I do want to quickly acknowledge our sponsor, ProWave AI. They're the developers behind Stylo Intel Ops. This is an incredibly advanced, AI-powered open-source intelligence program that helps us process and verify the massive amounts of global data we rely on to bring you these exact assessments. And they also bring you Stylo News. That's the commercial version of this intelligence platform, and it's available right now on the web and through their mobile apps for AI-powered news on demand. We certainly appreciate their support as we transition into today's verified facts. Here is the morning rundown of what we're going to cover. First, we'll establish the strategic map and regional overview. Second, we'll look at the primary threat patterns and their impacts. Third, we'll compare public sentiment versus verified intelligence. Fourth, a look at likely near-term geopolitical events. And finally, our final assessment and podcast details. All right, part one, the strategic map and regional overview. Understanding the physical map is absolutely essential if we want to grasp the geopolitical reality on the ground. When we look at this northern operating environment, the Kola Peninsula up in the northeast is the true center of gravity for Russia's northern fleet. It houses their critical strategic deterrence assets. To the northwest, the Barents Sea acts as a crucial maritime approach. Then, shifting our focus toward NATO and Nordic defense nodes, you have key points like Bodo in Norway, a vital airbase region, and the island of Gotland in Sweden, which basically serves as a strategic anchor right in the Baltic Sea. The interplay between these specific geographic points dictates the entire security architecture of Northern Europe. To make sense of this, we have to understand the differing priorities of the key actors involved. On one side, there's the Russian Northern Fleet. Their primary strategic posture leans heavily on what military analysts call bastion defense. That simply means protecting their second-strike nuclear capabilities and maintaining sea denial in the Arctic. On the other side, we have NATO and the Nordic Defense Commands. Their posture is strictly oriented toward regional deterrence. They're focused on maintaining maritime control and ensuring that rapid reinforcement routes stay wide open in the event of a crisis. So it's really a classic standoff of strategic denial on one hand versus access assurance on the other. Moving on to part two, primary threat patterns and impacts. Naturally, these operational patterns don't happen in a vacuum. They create cascading impacts straight across our societies. Locally, we are tracking verified vulnerabilities concerning critical infrastructure and edge device cyber probing. At the national level, we're seeing this impact shape defense policy. For example, intelligence highlights how Swedish defense messaging is heavily emphasizing that Europe needs to reduce its absolute reliance on U.S. military support and start bolstering its own self-reliance. And then internationally, these patterns directly influence NATO's overarching Arctic readiness. It's exactly what's driving large-scale integrated exercises in the High North, like Cold Response 2026. So what is actually happening out there? Well, intelligence confirms a persistent, credible military threat environment. But here's the crucial takeaway. It's primarily characterized by hybrid operations, not a conventional massing of troops. We're talking about verified cyber probing that targets routers and public sector networks. We're also tracking persistent GPS jamming and electronic warfare messing with Baltic and Nordic airspace. And, perhaps most notably, we are monitoring submarine reconnaissance. They're actively out there mapping undersea infrastructure like communications cables and energy pipelines, all across the North Atlantic and the Norwegian Sea approaches. This brings us to part three. Public sentiment versus verified intelligence. If you spend any time on social media, you've probably seen some politically charged fears of an imminent conventional invasion. A lot of this is being fueled by widespread panic over alleged, though largely uncorroborated, drone incidents in Finnish airspace. But the verified intelligence presents a starkly different reality. The hard data shows absolutely zero visible mobilization of strike forces anywhere near the Scandinavian borders. Instead, analysts assess the threat as a long-term, hybrid focus. It's highly probable that this huge gap between public alarm and military reality is actually being intentionally exploited by state actors. It's a classic tactic to manipulate public cohesion and put pressure on local governments. To really ground our understanding, let's look at this assessment linked to the Estonian foreign minister.
It states very clearly, and I quote, "No intelligence currently supports claims of Russian attack preparation. No mobilization is visible." That's a highly authoritative assessment, firmly rejecting the alarmist claims of an immediate conventional thrust into the Baltics or Scandinavia. Now, we should be clear, the absence of an imminent attack doesn't mean the absence of a threat, but it fundamentally changes how we need to prepare and respond today.
Let's turn to part 4, likely near-term geopolitical events.
We've put together an objective near-term watch list for you to keep an eye on. Looking 7 days out, expect to see continued airspace testing and deniable drone probes right around Nordic military facilities and ports. Fast forward to the 14-day mark, and the data suggests we'll see persistent GPS interference operations and electronic warfare originating from those border regions. This is deliberately designed to complicate civilian and military logistics. And looking 30 days out, expect sustained submarine patrols out of the Kola Peninsula heading into the Barents and Norwegian seas, alongside continuous monitoring of that undersea infrastructure we mentioned earlier. These are carefully calculated, highly deniable activities meant to signal capability.
And finally, part 5, final assessment and podcast details.
Our final judgment on the intelligence is this. The Northern Front is simply not facing an imminent conventional invasion. What we're actually seeing is Russia utilizing a layered, multi-domain campaign of sustained hybrid pressure and strategic military signaling. The ultimate goal here is to test NATO's cohesion, probe for infrastructural vulnerabilities, and secure their Arctic bastion, all without ever crossing the threshold into open warfare. Basically, it's a long-term test of endurance and situational awareness for all of Northern Europe. Well, that concludes our morning explainer. Thank you for tuning in and for valuing calm, factual intelligence. To dive much deeper into these assessments, we invite you to listen to the full, comprehensive podcast audio of Northern Front, Russia Tests NATO's Arctic Edge. That's the May 1st, 2026 release, available on your favorite channel or by clicking the link in this post. And don't forget to subscribe at stylonews.com for your AI-powered news on demand. Russia has clearly shown it can test NATO's patience without firing a single conventional shot. But the real question is, how long can Northern Europe endure this shadow war before the gray zone turns red? Stay informed, stay objective, and have a good morning.